Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode, A Sea Beyond Philosophy. Philosophy, the word means love of wisdom, philosophia. In these talks that I've been giving, I have been attempting as a human being to wonder about the various ways human beings have looked at the landscape so far, and to wonder about what could have gone missed, what could have been done differently. There is a quote which is really the inspiration for this talk tonight. The quote is from the Sufi mystic named Attar of Nishapur. And Attar of Nishapur says, "The sea is the sea, whatever the drop's philosophy." And so we have also a quote from a man named Giordano Bruno. "Truth does not change because it is or is not believed by a majority of the people." We can say, I've termed it as every person has a universal principle philosophy, which means they have put the world in a sort of dualistic axis at their core. Giordano Bruno, he has this quote. He says, "To ask the power to reform itself, what a dullness." Giordano Bruno also says, "I've declared infinite worlds to exist beside this our earth. It would not be worthy of God to manifest himself in less than an infinite universe." We can see that, of course, religion was an influence on a lot of minds. A sea beyond philosophy is a suggestion that regardless of how many ways we know things, the unknown still remains unknown. Attar of Nishapur was a Sufi mystic. This dude was alive like 1,000 years ago, and the Sufis had a certain hierarchy of progression toward other wells of reality. Of course, like many traditions, there's many different schools, but what I have been acquainted with was this notion that in the Sufi tradition, there were four stages of the alteration of consciousness. That means throughout history, what we find is human beings have, as Alan Watts says very poetically, just like a tree appled, this earth peopled. People began emerging. When they began emerging, their lives began being, you know what it is? It's like as if a creature, again, I say this often, a creature in an eco environment back in the day, the environment was its mind. That means you can totally see a creature that's in a sort of cyclical in the program of its biology, of its biological design. For example, that mountain lion, when the mountain lion noticed the nature photographer, that was like a new imagination of the mountain lion, you can say. The environment revealed it. Now we human beings, we separated ourselves from the environment. We were like, okay, enough with the jungles, let's go towards the concrete. And so as we went towards the concrete, the responsibility of the world fell on our shoulders. We all became Atlas, from Greek mythology to some degree, where every day we live, every day we go through this mountain and carry the weight of the world, and then we sleep, and then we wake up and we carry on the weight of the world again, and then we sleep and carry on. And this weight is an evolution, so people may feel responsibility to some degree intimidating, you know but it's the privilege. We evolved to have it, we evolved so that we can separate ourselves from nature, to comprehend it in many ways. If there wasn't an initial separation, this is why I say the most fascinating thing about the objective evolution is the fact that we have limbs. We separated. We're walking on the earth. We're not like the earth right now. We're walking on it. You see, there was a separation of self and world. That means it was just world, then self, and then self and world. And then now, through the subjective evolution, the self has its own world. That means your mind, the immaterial, okay, here, I could say the mind learned well from the body. These four stages in the Sufi path, by the way, guys, the light is geometry talk. I've left that for tomorrow to give it in the day. So this is just another talk before the important one. But, anyways, the Sufi path. In the Sufi path, they call them, I mean, I'm translating it probably not as accurately as I want to, but there was first the Rend. They would call it Rendonimast when they would become liberated. And so the idea was the Rend was the gamer. And that's a way of saying it was the being who was aware that life occurred in games. Life occurred in simulations of events that are maintained, and then stop. When you suddenly realize a lot of things in life are games, then you actually relax. You stop identifying with just the goal of one game. It's like a soccer player. Suddenly, imagine you're a soccer player running on a soccer field. Suddenly, you look to your right and you're like, what the hell? And you see like a group of American football players running. And so you see it's as if American football field and a vertical soccer field are placed together in the same place, imagine, like a cross. Yeah. Do you know? So imagine that while people are playing soccer, there's also football being played, American football, you know? So we have two types of football, in a strange cross-linking of the fields. So anyways, just being aware of the game. Usually those people who are trying to make you aware, okay, buddy, you got an ego, calm down. That's to realize that the ego exists in a gaming format. That means an archetype has its own subconscious design-oriented purpose, you know? Once the first phase, the gamer, once you realize life is a game, you stop losing or winning in the games. You could see the matrix codes in every moment. You could see what the inner realms want and what the outer realms want. I didn't have this ability, but later on I could. I could totally see in people if the person's motivated because of an outer realm phenomena or an inner realm phenomena. I can even look at people and say, is that guy speaking for their inner realms or for their outer realms? And it's very complex to just speak about the outer realm without any interference of your inner realms, and to just speak about the inner realms without any interference of the outer realms. It's not possible. But anyways, this was the stage, let's call it, of the gamer. Rend is the Farsi word. It's a gamer in the spiritual sense, not in like the video games. Just in the sense that you could see the narrative that life occurs through. Do you know what does that mean? That means if you're a father, you're playing a certain game with your, for example, children. If you're same time the father is also a husband, there's another game being played with the wife. And what I call these games, but this is actually the expression of the character and narrative. You know. So that was the first stage. The second stage was the ego breaker. The ego breaker. The ego breaker. What does that mean? That means the person's sense of first the person realized they're not just an individual, they're an individual in the game. Now the person is realizing there is something more than the game and they're only individual in the game. So once you notice something beyond the game, you know, not just realizing life is a game, realizing something beyond the game, there is no individual consciousness to hold it. So that's the ego breaker, was when the person is no longer being individual to some degree, in a certain state of mind. It's not like nothing is like permanent here. You know, that means, even suffering dies. So the ego breaker was the person who no longer had had confronted the Jungian shadow. There we go. That's something so close to it, close along those lines. You know, they had confronted the persona archetype, the individualism. That means if it was a metaphysical classroom, the person graduated from individualism. If I'm saying, because you got to understand, I'm talking about the Sufi tradition. It's a very metaphysical tradition. You know, when I say metaphysical tradition, that means that tradition had an engagement with an animate unknown. So you're seeing these levels of mystical inquiry. First, the person noticed the game. Then they noticed the player in the game. The moment they saw beyond, they saw that they weren't a thought, and it was something that they would say, deep in Farsi, they would call it like, what's the word? What's the divan? The person after going through a mystical experience of seeing beyond their individuality would suddenly get revealed certain realms, and they would go share these realms, and people would be, oh, that's crazy, man. Back in the day when people were just like taking care of their farm animals or something, you know. And so it had that sort of notion. That means first you noticed the game of the known. Then you moved beyond the game of the known. Now you are in the situation where you're noticing the game of the unknown. The game of the unknown. And so it was literally, the translation of that stage was crazies. Like those people who their inner realm would shift to such a degree where the outer realm couldn't just remain in a certain way of meaning, you know. Then there was literally, the translation is, this is all in a mystical context what I'm saying, the drunk. And it wasn't an alcoholic intoxication, it wasn't a chemical intoxication, it was an energetic intoxication. That means it had nothing to do with, per se, the chemical um, state of the person. Do you know? And so what it was this idea that I don't know how many people know who whirling dervishes are. I'm gonna show you a picture so you see this. This is Rumi, who I often quote. His tomb is in Turkey, and these people are known as the whirling dervishes. These people are Sufis. I'm going to show you a picture of them. And to a Western audience, they're going to be like, what? But it's very important because this is culture, of course. We shouldn't forget. And I'm going to explain to you the sort of context these people have. So whoever's tuned in, look at the wallpaper of the talk. You're going to see these are the whirling dervishes. You see these guys? These guys just like waving their hands in there, you know? There's some DJs in the club, they're like, wave your hands in the air. And these guys, it's as if the divine beloved is their DJ, you know? They're anyways, in this idea of whirling dervishes, remember, I'm building up to the fourth stage. The fourth stage is something like this, where it was a sort of intoxication in the divine reality. An intoxication in the divine reality, where the person was considered that their attention wasn't in the body. I'm not joking. That means these people, if it like, I wouldn't say this is for overall, but I'm saying like it was this view that when these guys are whirling, it's a human being whirling. I mean, that's a complex activity. If you want to do it for an hour, for 2 hours just whirling, you know, so it's definitely a state of consciousness that is different, you know. So when these guys would whirl, there was this idea that their attention, their consciousness would go outside of their body, so they couldn't properly move in the body back in the day, you know? So people would say, what do you call it? Rendone mast to some degree, you know? That the dervish was drunk, but he wasn't drunk on alcohol or something. The person was drunk on the nature of reality energetically, if I can say something like that, and experientially totally different because there's a dissolution of identity. That means these people spinning, they're not people to themselves right now in these moments. The fourth stage was a dissolution of identity and inseparability of the individual phenomena in life, regardless of how they have been classified, with the overall phenomena of life. You know, a sort of a dissolution of the individual to the individual, but yet the body is there. You know, I want to go into a quote tunnel now. I've brought up Attar. An Attarian. Attar, of course, is not his real name. Attar means cologne salesman. But back in the day, people didn't, their last names were based on their profession. So when you go look at the last names of certain people, you know, um, uh, like the Smiths, like the last name Smith, like you could totally see their ancestors were blacksmiths or something, you know? So guys, these are some quotes from Attar of Nishapur. I find this man, by the way, to be one of the most profoundest human beings on this earth. That's why I'm reading his quotes. Attar says, we have no freedom to achieve our goal until, from self and fools, we free the soul. To be admitted past the veil, you must be dead to all the crowd considers just. Once past the veil, you understand the way. from which the crowd's glib courtier blindly stray. If you have any will, leave women's stories. And even if the search for hidden glories proves blasphemy at last, be sure our quest is not mere talk but an exacting test. The fruit of love's great tree is poverty. Whoever knows this knows humility. I'm going to comment on this. Of course, Attar is historically, this man is like thousands of years older than me. I got to respect his position. But the thing is, he's saying is at the end, he brings it down to humility. He says the fruit of love's great tree is poverty. Whoever knows this knows humility. What does that mean? If you could imagine a person just doing good for no reason, in a cruel society, they will go down, they will sink in a cruel society. But in that humility, they will experientially be free. You see, you think your action as a human being is just for your objective phenomena, for your objective self. It's like many people don't realize what you do also has an influence on your inner realms. Attar of Nishapur, guys, this is a quote tunnel segment of the show. Keep that in mind. I'm reading quotes from Attar of Nishapur. Attar says, a sluggard once approached a fasting saint, and baffled by despair, made it this complaint. The devil is a highwayman, a thief, who's ruined me and robbed me of belief. The saint replied, young man, the devil too has made his way here to complain of you. My province is the world, I heard him say. Tell this new pilgrim of God's holy way to keep his hands off what is mine. If I attack him, it's because his fingers pry in my affairs. If he will leave me be, he's no concern of mine and can go free. Very complex, again, metaphysical, also theological influence. You got to realize, guys, Sufism is just like we have in Christianity, a spiritual denomination known as Gnosticism, which is more of a metaphysical approach towards Christianity. Similarly, in regards to Islam, the spiritual denomination is Sufism. However, there's a deviation because so many people in the Islamic world have killed off the Sufis, due to certain disparities. Human beings have been fighting over ideas, but ideas have also been fighting over human beings' minds. That means in some of these talks, I've told people I've been fighting language since childhood. I'm not joking. What I mean by that is I have been fighting how an ideology was trying to possess my being, in the sense that my actions and behavior was just limited to that ideology. This is why I have a love and hate relationship with language. I love it when it's used well. I hate it when the person thinks they are the language, because it deceives. It's the great deception of the story of the self that was never here. An old sad Attar says, an old sad woman talked to Mahna's sheikh. Teach me to pray for joy, for pity's sake. I've suffered so much that I cannot bear to think of future grief. Give me some prayer to murmur every day. So Attar is relaying this story. He says, the sheikh replied, how many years I wandered far and wide until I found the fortress that you seek. It is the knee, bend it, accept, be meek. I found no other way. This remedy and only this will cure you of your misery. The reason is, I think again, he's saying like your misery is complex, be simple. Be simpler than your misery. Attar says, until this dog, the self, can be subdued, our life is folly endlessly renewed. Holy sh! This man is going next level. It's like, Attar says, a man who lived by digging graves survived to ripe old age. A neighbor said, you've thrived for years, digging away in one routine. Tell us the strangest thing you've ever seen. He said, all things considered, what's most strange is that for 70 years, without a change, that dog, myself, has seen me digging graves, yet neither dies, nor alters, nor behaves. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Wow. What a liberated person. Wow. So, guys, the story is pretty much saying there's this old grave person digging graves, and somebody who sees this, he's been doing it for many years. He looks at him and he's like, you've been doing this for many years, digging away, just doing the same thing. What's the strangest thing you've ever seen? And this is the answer the guy says. He says, all things considered, what's the most strangest thing is that this self, this awareness of the self, has seen me digging grave. That means he's saying that all these things have changed except the consciousness which never dies. So this grave digger is saying his consciousness never dies. It's the only thing that hasn't changed. That he says, yet neither dies nor alters nor behaves. Kind of like, again, a Rene Descartesian mind dualistic kind of view on it. You know, that the body goes through various activities, yet the mind is just chilling. Attar says, the whole world is a marketplace for love. For naught that is, from love remains remote. The eternal wisdom made all things in love. On love they all depend, to love all turn. The earth, the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, the center of their orbit find in love. By love are all bewildered, stupefied, intoxicated by the wine of love. You see how he's using wine? This is again going back to being drunk on the ultimate. You know, that means some people want to drink beer, some people want to drink the true nature of reality. Attar says, in the dead of night, a Sufi began to weep. He said, this world is like a closed coffin in which we are shut, and in which through our ignorance we spend our lives in folly and desolation. When death comes to open the lid of the coffin, each one who has wings will fly off to eternity, but those without will remain locked in the coffin. So, my friends, before the lid of this coffin is taken off, do all you can to become a bird of the way to God. Or you can change it as the truth of nature or whatever. Way to God. Do all you can to develop your wings and your feathers. You know? You see, guys, back in the day, you could totally see the dude was alone. Like, maybe there was a village. People were savage. People had to love themselves so they wouldn't go extinct to themselves, you know? And so you can't really love the self. So you can see that if we say that what we see is a reflection of our experiences, so the divine love is it's kind of like Rumi says, what you seek is seeking you. Or Kabir, this Indian poet, says, many know that the drop merges into the ocean, but few know that the ocean merges into the drop. That means many people feel an individual thing is going towards a collective thing. Few people know the collective is moving towards the individual. Humanity cares for humans, just like humans care for humanity, you know? Attar says, let us drown ourselves in the ocean of non-existence and come out cloaked with the garment of divine existence. You know, that's a simple way of saying study the world. Attar says, Saleh, which seems to be another sage, always taught his disciples, who knocks at the door of someone constantly, one day the door must be opened to him. Rabia is another sage. He says, Rabia one day heard it and said, Saleh, how long will you go on preaching thus, using the future tense, saying will be opened? Was the door ever closed? Saleh bowed in submission to her. Yeah. What does that mean? That means the door of efficiency is open. Many stories also live lives in this world, you know. Language is living among people. It's just living in the streets of people's minds. As people walk in the streets, language moves in the streets of their mind. Attar says, from each, love demands a mystic silence. What do all seek so earnestly? 'Tis love. This love. Love is the subject of their inmost thoughts. In love, no longer thou and I exist, for self has passed away in the beloved. Now will I draw aside the veil from love, and in the temple of mine inmost soul behold the friend incomparable love. He who would know the secret of both worlds will find that the secret of them both is love. What does that mean? That means it's a state of no resistance. It's an incomparable love. It is energy's innocence. We are innocently being energetic phenomena. It's just that our minds are so sophisticated that they can't just be. So in the sense of doing, the narratives of civilization are running free. And so when you speak to a person, it's always in a story format, is it not? This is why I'm telling people, study language. It is the most important thing on this planet. Because meaning breathes through language to the human consciousness subjectively. That means if people realize knowledge is just how other human beings have looked at the world so far, they wouldn't get intimidated. You know, the way the educational system shows itself, it is dishonoring. You know, it's dishonoring the student's mind. For me, schools nowadays are great businesses, but bad schools. Attar says a young man came to Junayad, another Sufi with the pearl, and another enlightened sage. He says a young man came to Junayad and wished to become his student. He said, "You have been recommended as an expert on pearls of wisdom. Please give me one or sell it to me." Junayad replied, "You could not afford the price if I sold it, and if I gave you one for nothing, you will not realize its value. You must do as I have done. Dive into the sea and wait patiently until you obtain your pearl." Guys, this is exactly what I'm saying, that the pilot of consciousness navigates as the whole plane of existence, then through the rhythm of the intelligence of the world activates as a person. This is a very important quote. I'm going to share it here, guys. You see, guys, because it's your eyes, only you can obtain your pearl. That means the world will move your sense of self until you realize that the sense of self can also move. You see, it's like we got to realize there is a co-pilot. It's the nature of the world. Right now, if I was to see my intelligence as a plane, an airplane with two co-pilots, I would say one co-pilot is how the self is moving the world, the other co-pilot is how the world is moving the self. There's been times when I have just been tired and something intense has happened and I was too tired to even be a thought in that moment. Do you know? That means in that moment the self became very, you can say, transparent to as like glass, and so the world's rhythm began moving me. You know, right now, dear listener, you don't think about your heart. You don't think about your lungs. You don't think about what goes on inside your body. It just naturally conducts itself. It naturally happens, right? It's that certain faculties of our intelligence, we're like, okay, we're conscious with the motor senses, you know? We have this whole access to this, I poetically call it that imagination is like your own private room. There's a privacy policy to imagination. What does that mean? That means two people can be in a room and they can imagine totally different things, and the other won't see their imagination. They could just see how their eyes have drifted to some corner of the room or something, you know? Attar says, tear aside veils of all you see in this world, and you will find yourself apart in solitude with God. If you draw aside the veils of the stars and the spheres, you will see that all is one with the essence of your own pure soul. If you will but tear aside the veil, you will see non-existence, and you will see forthwith the true meaning of God's purpose. When you have cast aside the veil, you will see the essence, and all things will be shown forth within the essence. If you draw aside the veil from the face of the beloved, all that is hidden will be made manifest, and you will become one with God, for then you will be the very essence of the divine. So think of it this way, that we human beings are saying we're energetic creatures, we're animate, and we have a personality, and we are relating the personality to the brain. But now Attar is giving this picture that there's a veil, that what we think is the world we're really in is actually there's curtains in it. And once you push aside this curtain, it's as if you see the nature of the behind the scenes, in the sense that there's no inseparability of so think of it this way, we're energy that is conscious of itself. Now the consciousness is reverse engineering, realizing its energy and realizing the will of consciousness, you see, or the will of the mind. Because it's strange. I mean, we say we have free will, but we are responding to the stimulus in the environment as if the environment is sculpting us, is it not? And our retaliation against it suggests how we get sculpted, or not just retaliation, but how we go through the moment. Guys, I think this is also very crucial. Um, of course, this is all Sufism, what I'm telling you, sharing with you here. These are Sufi quotes. But I'm trying to see in a modern lens, what is their value, you know? Okay, there we go. That's the quote, guys. That's the full quote. It is healthy to wonder about the unknown. The unknown has made us fear, and it has one of the greatest sources of why beliefs exist, because if the person actually knew what was going on, they didn't have to believe or disbelieve anything. It is the absence of an experiential knowing that is also collectively shared. That means, imagine suddenly, let's say a ghost appears in the room, or let's say some future time traveler, but ethereal. Some ethereal figure appears. Now, three of the friends see it, one of the friends doesn't see it, you know? And so that one friend, either that one friend is correct, those three friends are wrong, okay? Either the three friends are wrong, the one friend, the three friends are right, the one friend is wrong, or the you see how it is? You see how it is? The system, it's all movement. That means I think this idea of whether we look at a democratic system, of course, it's one of the best political systems we have for now, but we see it's still the majority's vote. The majority is not everybody, for example. So we are actually living in a coagulation of different agreements on what is real. That means it's very complex, mystifying to me how we can be ourselves while everything is being something before we declare the self. That means before you learned language as a child, who were you? Who? What biography did you have? Do you know? What emotions you can have. This is why you see, like, conditioning only applies to the individual, you know? This is why any non dual state of mind can't be controlled, can't be touched. Dual states of mind can be endlessly manipulated, and that's really what magic has been. You think there's a coincidence language has a relationship with magic? It's an advanced technology. If you use the advanced technology in a bad way, oh man, look at this bad magic. You use the advanced technology in a good way, you're like, oh, look at this good magic, but it's the technology, and it's a subtle technology. And it's like this discrimination. The reason I can say, I mean, to be honest, I had seen many people talk about the inner workings of the mind, but I saw nobody is using it in the sense of realms. Nobody is treating the mind as if it's like a coin and there's another room on the other side, or it's two rooms at once. I can tell you, any person, you can check for yourself. You can see that in front of your eyes there's an objective phenomenology. If you close your eyes, if somebody asks you who are you when your eyes are closed, you see you arise as a subject, you know. And the thing about the mind is very remarkable, because all these ideas I'm saying, like, I can visualize right now very easily. I can visualize, like, I don't know, a golden sphere glowing right in front of me. I can visualize it. It's like somebody telling you to visualize a circle. Now somebody telling you to visualize a golden sphere. You know, so you can visualize this golden sphere hovering in front of you, but you see you can't touch it. Or when you put your hand on it and thought that sphere was like a sun, it wouldn't burn you. Do you see? So the inner realms is like being able to live without a consequence of physical influence. It's as if we are living and dying behind our eyes in a much quicker pace than we're actually, like, deteriorating in physical life throughout time. So I'm saying that the inner life is changing way more than the outer life until the inner life realizes who is watching this change. Who is this me that has been blowing birthday candles all these years? You know? And so you notice you are the viewer of change. You are the viewer of a changing self. That means you don't have the same body as you had 10 years ago. You don't have the same ideological, psychological constitution as you had 10 years ago. People change based on also the various waves of information that hit the human being. If you're a little kid right now, let's say, even if you don't read a book, the world is, trust me, in your subconscious, the world is building a picture. Michelangelo said, I saw this Italian sculptor. He said, I saw an angel in the stone, and I set it free. This sculptor saw the potential of, like, an angel in a rock. And he made that angel, he sculpted that rock. And so for me, the mind is that which is seeing into the phenomena. That means the same way Michelangelo saw that rock and saw an angel in it, it's as if now thinking, what if the world looked at itself and it saw a human in itself? That means the question of whether our intelligence is limited to our individualhood is key, you know? Because what if in higher dimensional intelligence is a field? There's no way. We can't shake hands, let's say, with the extraterrestrials. The extraterrestrials, let's say, they're fields of intelligence. They're like intelligent rhythms and currents. You know? What would we do then? So we have to wonder from all angles, because that's how you become an efficient system. I looked at it and I'm like, let's say there was an alien invasion, but people didn't know there was an alien invasion. How would you unite all these people fighting? And there is this tactic. There is this military, there is just this view that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I sat down, guys, and I wondered, what is the enemy of all human beings? And I had various conclusions. One conclusion was time. We are all fighting against time to some degree. I thought about the other sort of the enemy being a sort of either, like Independence Day, you can say an alien attacking, so we have to, it makes sense to all be equal in that moment. The one word that I realize will unite the species, will unite any conscious creature. It doesn't matter if we were as a, or we as if it doesn't matter if I was on another planet wanting to get another civilization's assistant and help with Earth or whatever. Imagine we were under attack and you went to the alien neighbors and you're like, holy shit, we're getting attacked, come and help us. And the alien neighbors were, all right, we'll help our pals. So what it is it the unknown is the enemy of all your enemies. It is the one thing that the human being is endlessly engaging. That means you can get as many certifications on your wall, only to realize nobody knows the unknown. You know? That means specialization has its value, of course. I mean, we need telescopes sometimes. But at the same time, it's as if what is the species waiting for? What are human beings holding back for? It's as if the texture of life is not just you live a story beginning, middle, end. It's as if every moment is a new sight, or can be. So it's this weird situation where we have to save technologies that are at the brink of being lost, very important ideas. And at the same time, we need to have the future generations not be brainwashed by those ideas. Do you know? And so the only way is a non-identification with language, which immediately makes you a puzzle piece somewhere. We can't build an advanced civilization until we notice a value that I find it transcends uh, uh, the individual. Because we're all facing the unknown. That's why we're holding on to what we know. That's why knowledge is the most important thing. This is why the information age made us. It's like human beings are no longer trying to look for fruit. They're trying to look for knowledge to see what is this story of the world that we're all in. You know, you can say the attempt of every branch of knowledge is to find the, like Lord of the Rings, the one ring to rule them all. We're constantly trying to find a story, a truth that doesn't change. Sorry, guys, I'm just really zooming in on this point. Right now, I want you to try a thought experiment and imagine you had read every book on this planet. You had heard every lecture online. You had heard everything. We had even blessed you with all the information in the internet and in cyberspace, and you were a human being that knew everything. What would your information be? If you were right now at the epitome, you knew everything. What would you do next? You see, the next is always the unknown. Human beings require the unknown to live. If the whole moment is trying to be known 100%, it will be very destructive for the person. Because without the unknown, you can't breathe. That means think about the moments in life we really live for. It's like sometimes when I see social activity and I'm like, why? You know, why are human beings going in the streets of this world? And I realize why. Because we are looking for that unknown event that shows us that there is more than us. That is the subconscious, it brings tears to the eye story that is happening in every person's life. That we are seeking the unknown, and that is why we want to know more. You know? But the interesting thing is, the unknown is way more than the known. So unless the person finds a way to become content with the unknown, knowledge, like Thanos in Avengers said, you know, can be a curse. That means, why do you know? You know, if Carl Jung was alive right now, I would ask him this question if he thinks the unconscious, if he thinks the unconscious is aware of the conscious. Carl Jung did something genius in his ideology. He took a layer of meaning off the idea of the creation of the universe, and his genius, the genius of Carl Jung, is the word, the collective unconscious. I find this word was the genius of Carl Jung. That means if you saw Carl Jung, his ideology as a sort of geometrical structure, this idea would be the most remarkable architecture you have seen. Guys, let me tell you a funny story. It's a funny story someone in Iran told me. Regardless of how people think the world is, there's always great stories. You know, there's stories everywhere. This story, it's hilarious. The story is about this shoemaker. And this shoemaker works hard, and his little kid is there trying to be like his father, you know, and his shoemaker is there, and the shoemaker, the kid sees his father comes home tired, you know, and like, no, I mean, the kid's there, like, he passes the shoe polish or something to the father, but the father is just working hard, you know. Then, at the end of the day, and the kid is very proud, you know, the father, at the end of the day, you know, puts his hand on his son's head, young son's head, and he's like, "Son, what do you want to be when you grow up?" The son looks at his father, and he sees his father's tired face, and he says, "I want to be just like you, Dad. I want to be a great, shoemaker." And his father, there's a silence, and the kid's like, you know, "My dad's getting old. I love him. Let me say this to him," you know. He suddenly sees his father is silent. And his father puts his hands on his face, you know? And he looks at his son and he's like, "Son, I wanted to be a king. I became a shoemaker. You want to be a shoemaker, you're going to be nothing." And the kid suddenly, he snaps out of this glorification of the weakness when the world is here once, for we are. The roars of our species will be heard. The blue jay on the branch whispers at dawn, only to know the real voice is the dawn. That means I feel the smartest win-win strategy of any individual alive in 2020 is you got to find a way where the roads of the future generations are more efficient. That's it. And to the ancient Greeks, this translated as to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. When we make the life of this world gentle, Mr. Within is telling you the greatest renaissance. There's a renaissance that hasn't happened yet. And the reason I predicted it, because I'm certain it will happen, because it's the only place left, you know. a multi-dimensional renaissance. And in Renaissance, you can, of course, it's a very, there is political, the Renaissance was like, there were political tensions. It was a societal movement. But I'm saying it in the sense that we're going to realize we have minds, and that in a global community where currently, I don't know if people know this, but there's getting close to 8 billion people on this planet. 8 billion people. First of all, that's why I'm saying we should build sky cities, you know? But the idea is that it's human framework. That means we are like a database for the perfect human being. That means if you could somehow access every human being's memory, it's as if nature is trying to create the ultimate human being. Do you know? And we're all like prototype phases, waves of it, imagine. Okay. Excuse me. What is, let us say, a non-dual victory? What does the human mind do with the void, the singular, the dualistic, and the infinite? What can we do? We explore the relationships, we build bridges, and we just build our kingdom. And I know nowadays the world is not fond of the idea of kings, but what if we considered that the king of all kings was just the vision of an advanced civilization, that men, human beings, wherever they were, they needed no greater leader than just to look at the world and see what it could be. You know, that's really it. You know, I have looked at the mirror many times. I have wondered, who is that? I have wondered, which memory am I wearing today that I think I am? And I realize that everything I experience becomes a memory anyway. You know, that we are like cameras roaming the surface of this earth, and if we dare open our mouth, then a voice can be heard. And it has to start in in multiple levels. That means something I realize that you can say it's the retaliation of the mind in the inner realms. That means think of the idea that in your outer realms you have a sword and a shield. Okay, you can live defensively or you can live offensively. You know. You can be on the offense or you could, you know, hold your guard, let's say. You could use the shield more or you could use the sword. I'm just using these as metaphors. Now, let us say in the inner realm there is a shield and a sword. Now, the shield is the nullification, so it's grounding yourself in your inner realms. Okay, and I don't know how many people are able, but in any state, whether chemically induced or non-chemically induced, you can instantly observe your way out of any turbulence in the inner realms. Okay, um, I would say that the sword is the ability to what's the word? The multidimensionality of it. Your mind, that means, what does that mean? That means if when a human being, a problem comes to you, you can just be very impulsive and be like, oh, you just like try to answer, try to solve the problem just as on a very reaction basis, you know, response basis, stimulus, like you, something happened, you just reacted, you know, and you could try to, it's like that, or you can just be still. You can be more still and silent than the problem. Do you know? And the problem in how it behaves shows how it works. So the mind can suddenly open up dimensions. It's the whole add and minus thing. Do you know? But believe it or not, it's happening in a psychological level where we're adding dimensions. Like time is the fourth dimension that we added. You know? You don't forget, human beings put on the watch. The watch didn't just jump onto the human being's hand, you know? Many ideas we keep, and many ideas we can never keep. So that's the thing. In any time there's a problem, just my one of my uncles, believe it or not, gave me a very important, valuable life advice. And he told me in any emergency, and he was a very smart man, he would play chess with three people at the same time with his eyes closed. You know? And once I managed to beat him in chess on an airplane when he was jet lagged. But this uncle of mine, he told me this, that dimensions can be seen in the moment. That's pretty much what I do in these talks. You know, things can change in elevation. Your attention is really the most important part of you, or we can say it is the presence. That means, isn't it remarkable that regardless of who we are, where we are, what we are here? And people feel honor is dead. The honor is our history, is that we are still here. That's our honor, you know? So that's what I'm telling you guys. In any moment, be pilot through the situation. So many situations I pilot. That means that when I was younger, I would let the moment pilot. And then I realized the moment has no idea how my eyes are seeing it. You know? That means it's as if like um uh you can have someone order food for you, for example, but that person may not know what you want actually. You know? I'm gonna share a Zen story with you that has to do with honor. I just remembered. There is this Zen master, and he's in a temple with his disciples and whatnot. And what happens in the Zen story, if I remember correctly, is that one of the disciples is stealing from the temple, and the other disciples realize this. You know, one disciple has joined and he's stealing from the temple, and they go and tell the Zen master, and the Zen master doesn't say anything. You know, as if he doesn't, as if it's not an issue. Then the event happens again, and the disciples are like, "What the fuck? This like, what is this? Like, you know, can we speak to the manager of this temple? You know?" And so the disciples go to the sage again, and they say the second time, and the sage is like, "It's fine, whatever." And then it happens one more time. Now, this time, the disciples have had enough. The disciples go to the Zen master and they say, "Listen, there is a person here who's stealing. And if you don't kick him out and we know who it is, we will leave. We will all leave." And this is really, guys, true human character. The moral of this story. The Zen master looks at them and says, "You can leave. Because you guys know the difference between right and wrong. But this guy who's stealing, this poor soul doesn't even know the difference between right and wrong. You know? And he says, you guys can all leave. He remains as my disciple." And the students are, their eyes are teared up and they suddenly realize that it's true. That this world has had enough stumbling fools. When is that greatness coming that we constantly get previews of? So in that story, that was the thing. That is really true living, where you see it, where you're life sensitive before you are ideologically convinced by what the external phenomena is. You know, that means philosophers. It's like ask a philosopher a question, and you will get a million questions. You know, but an answer, it's like who knows. Philosophers are awesome, guys. You know, people don't realize this. You know, the philosophical mind is the mind that was not. It's like you, to be honest, in everything you require to wonder about the unknown and make advancements. You know, we are a philosophical species. We have to be if we want to look around and wonder what's going on. You know. I have perceived this thing. It's often at the back of my talks. It's like this lingering feeling, you know? And it's this idea that we have potentially if we hold accurate Ray Kurzweil's prediction, this futurist prediction on this technological singularity and super intelligent computers waking up, we have 30 years to advance the user of technology. So now more than ever, there needs to be a revolution in the arts. The arts, you see, science and Leonardo da Vinci, of course, this is a quote ascribed to him. I don't know if it's accuracy, but I feel it has value. He says, to develop a complete mind, study the science of art. Study the art of science. Learn to see. Realize how everything connects to everything else. Because when you're in that survivor on an island mindset, you need every tool. You value every moment. Every memory is your comrade on your in this battlefield. You know, there are forces. The inner realms that you can create a force. You can say right now, what I'm doing as a human being in my inner realms is animate to a point that it has turned into words and a voice. It has inspired me enough to sit here and talk about it. You know. So how you wield your inner realms, it really has to do with how you have comprehended your attention so far. And where that really goes is that there are some things you know about yourself, those you can judge as much as you want, but there are some things you don't know about yourself. And that is why the future is fascinating, because we don't know who we will be and what roller coaster rides are meant for us. Yeah. We have to care for the mind more than of what the mind is working in. You know, it's as if like the dangers of man infusing with the technology. Imagine a human being driving a car, but suddenly in the future, the human being a car. Do you know? Imagine a sort of evolutionary line towards Transformers. So you would see the moment you become the car, the damage of the car you would feel. That means the moment we connect our consciousness, human consciousness, to the internet, then we suddenly turn off that computer that's all our brains are connected to, imagine. Do you know we will suddenly be left with a total different behavioral pattern than just the simple brain, you know, as if the brain had suddenly came out of paradise, you know? For me, it doesn't matter if the person, whoever's listening, whether you have a religious context to reality, whether you have a very secular context to reality, whether you have a sort of agnostic view to reality, whatever view you have to reality, just realize that you're a creature of design, and the most intelligent thing that this creature of design is like you're a puzzle piece that has to walk to your civilization. You are the puzzle piece that no hand is going to come and pick you up. You got to walk to where you, as far as you can see. And the cool thing about life is, if you don't really think too far ahead, you don't suffer. Do you know what I mean? If you take things to a certain measurement where you're like you see a certain, it's like the person climbing the mountain doesn't have to look at the peak. The person has to look at every part of the mountain they're climbing, and the whole vision and the meaning of life changes as the being lives and climbs this mountain of life. In one talk, I think in 2014, I said it in the terms of language is the tool, is the weapon of the gods. Do you know? That means the awareness beyond language was non-dual. Um, Guys, I also want to go into a quote tunnel of Giordano Bruno. And I think it's interesting to know this. A little about Giordano Bruno. So his full name is Giordano. Oh, sorry. He was born as Filippo Bruno, but then he was known as Giordano Bruno. And he was a philosopher, cosmologist, and mathematician, born 1548. So 1500s. Oh yeah, I forgot to say. Where is he from? Italian Dominican friar, philosopher, mathematician, poet, cosmological theorist, and hermetic occultist. Yeah, pretty much the guy was like looking in everything. It's like knowledge is different parts of an island, and some people have just walked to the different parts of the island. So, anyways, some quotes from Giordano Bruno. Time takes all and gives all. Giordano Bruno, there is no law governing all things. Giordano Bruno, truth does not change because it is, or is not, believed by a majority of the people, which I read this. Giordano Bruno says, if all things are in common among friends, the most precious is wisdom. Giordano Bruno says the divine light is always in man, presenting itself to the senses and to the comprehension, but man rejects it. Giordano Bruno says, if the butterfly wings its way to the sweet light that attracts it, it's only because it doesn't know that the fire can consume it. Giordano Bruno says, it is proof of a base and low mind for one to wish to think with the masses or majority, merely because the majority is the majority. Truth does not oh my God, how many times is this quote repeated here? Giordano Bruno, time is the father of truth. Its mother is our mind. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. Time is the father of truth. You can totally see the physical realm's destiny written there. And then it says its mother is our mind. That means our mind gives birth to the truth that the world, like a father, raises. You know? Totally, my respect for this man is increased. He says, the divine light is always in man, presenting itself to the senses. Oh, no, I read that. One last thing he says. Actually, that's it. Thought there was more quotes here. A sea beyond philosophy. When a civilization cares more about objects than subjects, its body updates, its mind will feel left behind. You know, Rumi has this thing in his poetry where he says this imagery where he says if you make your hand into a fist and keep it there intensely, the muscles will kind of go into a paralysis. If you stretch out your hand endlessly, you will also go into a paralysis. So there needs to be a balance. So it's as if just like the physical body, the objective realms require movement and stillness throughout the day to be animate, to be alive, the mind also requires that sort of movement and stillness. You can say stillness of the mind is observation and contemplation, and movement is actually the action, the expression of being something, you know? Out of curiosity, there's 14 people listening. So, would people like to hear some poetry I wrote in 2015? I mean, I can't. This has kind of inspired me to. All right, let's see. I wrote this poetry book called Kites of Old. Let me see. I don't have the file here. Actually, let me check. I found it. Nice, nice. All right, guys. Let me see how many poems are in this. There is. What is this? 33. 33 poems. So people in the chat section can choose any number from 1 to 33. And so, guys, this is something I wrote in 2016, 15, 16, those times. And it's this poetic work. It's actually available online, but I'm going to read from it now. Kites of Old. So, right off the bat, I feel like reading number 17. Let's see what this poem was. Maybe I should have chosen the lower number, less scrolling. Okay. So this poem from Kites of Old, this poetry work I've written, it's called Modern Shamanic Temptations. That's the name of the poem. And so it begins. Has a plant made you forget you are part of this planet? Or has it reminded you that you are the universe? Many flames have guided the lost to the founder of God. There is no puzzle to solve. Just open your heart of hearts. For the chest that kept treasure made all think the outside was not to be treasured. Let love speak first. Then all of creation shall become heaven's arrow. Let love speak first, then all of creation shall become heaven's arrow. I wonder what the author was thinking. Okay, so Melanie has chosen 13, and Cindy has chosen 4. So let's go in order. 13. In the morning light. Okay, guys. Sorry, I had to drink something. This black tea is gonna get me ready for this. Okay, 13. Here it goes. In the morning light. We all cherish how dawn dawns upon the patient mind. Who wants tea when there is no kettle? Take the time to observe space beyond time. Are you the God that whispers in your ear at night? These poems are not for people, but for all of existence. The greatness of joy is to realize there never was any misplaced stones. Some are tired, but never of hope. Some are tired, but never of hope. That's the end of the poem. Number 4. Let's see what number 4 is. Guardians of Nothing. So, guys, I think this is going to be a good poem. Number 4. From Kites of Old. Guardians of Nothing. Once a lion could not eat a sheep because it felt it was one. Is the trigger the weapon's fault? Your hands belong to all space and time. In creation, sign language seems to be popular for those who cannot live beyond the ego's deafness. You're not burdened by your decisions unless you think you are a thought. The guardians of nothing acknowledge a changing world before ideas. Wow. Wow. I am quite impressed with myself, guys, right now. The guardians of nothing with a capital N acknowledge a changing world before ideas. I mean, that means how many problems and suffering and all our miscalculations will go away if we just realize how much of our bias, our suffering will go away if we realize it's a changing world before the ideological landscape is built upon it. Number 4 was nice. You know, these are... All right, guys, you can keep the numbers coming. I mean, I'm just riffing in the talk at this point. Okay, number 7. Let's see. What is number 7? Number 3. Whoa, the title for number 3 is actually... Anyways, number 7 is Free Soul Sundays. I don't know. That's the title that I wrote that day for it. Free space soul space Sundays. So it says, are you burdened by speaking walls, or have deeper thoughts convinced you otherwise? Some nights the tears of wonder show that it was never a human that cried for the transcendence of Earth. If our planet bleeds, will we feel it alongside our many star families? What inspires a chaotic twist in the simple order of a complex infinity sign? And the infinity sign, yeah, it's like there's space. Tired bones may make the coffin seem like just another morning coffee, but did you know that you have transcendental breath? I think I meant that as a pun when I wrote it. Free Soul Sundays is more than just an idea. The God you see is within the eyes of all. Is this mystical poetry? Oh, sorry. Is this mystical poetry a mirror that is too much? Is this mystical poetry a mirror that is too much? Question mark. That's the end of that. The poem ends with a question. Somebody says number 22. Oh, Cindy. Okay. Let's see what 22 is. Guys, I'm interested to reading these because I haven't seen them for years. Like, I've not, like, I usually write in a stage where there's an emotional movement before the language. So with the muscle memory of the hand, the words are being written really behind in the inner realms. It's an event. All these poems were an event to me. So let's see, 22. And guys, something like the world might not know, but when I was writing these, there were days where just to see if it was possible, I remember I tried it. I got a notebook and I finished writing the whole notebook in one day, like poems like this, in one day. And I kept writing until the ink of the pen. I mean, granted, the pen wasn't like a new pen, but it was like the ink of the pen finished, yeah. I'm telling you, the mind is like an instrument, and if we trust ourselves, then music can be made. Okay, number 22 is wow. Okay, I'm being too excited. Number 22, guys. Okay, let me change the song I'm listening to in the background. All right. Number 22 is Kissing the Forehead of God. That's the name of the poem, Kissing the Forehead of God. Once a child, looked at the stars and only saw himself. Of course, in that moment, God was also looking at himself. What makes duality unite? Question mark. How can broken glass suggest the subtler reflections of existential decision making? I have seen the divine beyond the divide. Have you? Question mark. Once you kiss the forehead of God, the moment has already found you. That's when the poem ends. Once you kiss the forehead of God, the moment has already found you. That means you most likely have found the ultimate contentment, and so the unconscious mind of the universal sector is in allegiance with you. So guys, I'm gonna read what did I say, number 3 as the last poem, and then move on to Q&A with a few last remarks, but where's the link? Number 3, I think, is for people who may perhaps have chosen to walk the path of power. That means this poem, I definitely feel I'm going to read this. Like, so number 3 is called Kings of Madness. I gotta drink iced tea before I read this. All right, guys, let me see. What's the most kingly archetype my mind can fathom to give it a voice? Excuse me. Kings of Madness. Once a great king could not see, the same greatness within others? Could his subjects to him all be objects? Question mark. What makes the man forget the sun? S-U-N. Out of nowhere, out of nowhere, a phoenix manifested to guide the ignorant king. The phoenix spoke through flames that neither burnt for the past or the future. So this part's in quotations, guys. This is the phoenix speaking now. "O dear king, if you were a candle, who are you burning for?" Oh, that's it. That's the quotation. So the phoenix spoke through flames that neither burnt for the past or the future. And then in quotations, "Oh dear king, if you were a candle, who are you burning for?" So the phoenix came and said this to the king. In an instant, joy began to throw the throne and crown into the joy of creation. When the creator knows where it is, the here and now is free. The kings of madness in one moment can transcend all hierarchy. That's the end of the poem, guys. The kings of madness in one moment can transcend all hierarchy. That means enough with the good and evil. Let the advanced do its work, you know? A morality that's based on the attention of the person, not that where the attention of the person is, just that's who they are. We are creatures that are semi-defined by our environments, but also we define how our environments come across to us. So it's kind of interesting that we define how the environment is actually defining us. I hope in this episode, sorry guys, just a second. Trying to do something that the viewers may like. Just so it's written on the wall of the chat section. There we go. The human being is an opportunity. You know, it's rare circumstances in nature. You know, honestly, we're not that close to the sun to get fried. We're not that far back to be frozen. You know, the axis of the planet is in the right way, you know. A meteor hasn't hit Earth yet, you know. The civilization has been able to store knowledge. That was one of the most important advancements. The reason we all have minds because our ancestors cared about what was happening in the events of their lives, you know. And actually, your life is really where attention and energy and vision are all one. Whether the one is spelled O-N-E or W-O-N, you know. The sea is the sea, regardless of the drop's philosophy. Your inner realms are your unique angle of looking out the camera of your biological being into reality. Honestly, attention is a director of the validity of phenomena and experience. Attention for me is like the biggest clue that there are higher dimensions. We are like the most up-to-date thing here, you know. It's like too unique. And so probably in I don't know, maybe I'm gonna go on a two talk Guys, maybe in like 30 minutes or something, I'm going to give another talk, the main talk, the light is geometry talk. So, anyways, the outer realms is the collective workstation. That means if there was a space station where, um, like an international space station for different, astronauts of different nations in space, like the physical realm is our collective workstation. It is really our office is when our eyes open. Your work in this life begins when your eyes open. And I'll leave you off with this last quote from Rabindranath Tagore, which I feel is one of the most important quotes that really should be shared. He says, Rabindranath Tagore was an Indian polymath. He says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Service was joy. That means you first think life is about just the inner realm's desires, a hedonistic ambition. Then you suddenly realize, whoa, 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 there's a whole civilization trying to make it to the next phase. So you then you honor your civilization pretty much. Even if the civilization that may not honor you now, civilization 1.0 may not honor you, but you should still honor it. That means we don't just want an advanced civilization that looks cool. That means we will not be the same people in an advanced civilization. There will be an advancement in psychology. All these words. For me, it's old school. I feel the educational system should go into a massive reform, but it should do it with the input of the future generations. So children shouldn't just go into the educational system and just listen. They should contribute to the curriculum. So the curriculum is being updated based on what that means is, like, think of it this way. Imagine there's 8 billion human beings. How many baby Einsteins are born around the world? Okay, so now these baby Einsteins, if we created an educational system that would allow, that would realize that the human being is an expressive creature. So whatever every person's doing in this life, you're trying to express yourself in some way. That's pretty much work. You know, and it's like any movement is expression. It's like the guy got off the chair and a dancer looked at that and he's like, this could be considered a dance move, getting off a chair. you know Service is, it's kind of like if we're like energy, we're like batteries. It's like using up the battery for something that you could consciously consider. I mean, the faculty of consciousness makes us be aware more than the environment. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna end. Actually, I'm gonna have 5 minute Q&A just to be safe, and then the talk's pretty much over. So, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And remember, even if you think you're a drop, you know, a drop in the ocean really has no philosophy. It is the ocean. So experientially, there are states of mind that could perceive way more than linearized linguistic knowledge or subjective, you know, validity. So, anyways, thanks, guys. 5 minute Q&A. If anyone has a question, you can ask. Blessings.